It's an ordinary day. People are commuting to work, scrolling through the news, drinking their morning coffee. And then, suddenly, an alarming message. A nuclear missile launch has been detected. Only minutes remain before impact. One blinding flash, and entire cities vanish in a fireball. Panic, destruction, the silence after the explosion. The world we're used to no longer exists. But the main question is, can modern humans survive such a catastrophe? We'll find out at the end of the video. The most crucial time in any nuclear war is the first minutes after the missile launch. Modern warning systems can detect a launch almost immediately, but the time between detection and impact is typically only 5 to 30 minutes. For most people, this time passes unnoticed. They continue their normal activities and are unaware that a catastrophe has already begun. When a missile reaches its target, everything happens in a split second. First, there's a blinding flash, so bright that it can be seen tens of kilometers away. Then comes the shock wave, which destroys buildings, flips cars, and shatters windows at incredible speed. It's important to understand one thing. Most people die not from radiation, but from the explosion, fire, and collapse. That's why where you are at the moment of impact can completely determine your fate. These first seconds and minutes are crucial. And sometimes, one correct action can mean the difference between life and death. A nuclear explosion begins with a blinding flash. It's so bright that it can be seen even with your eyes closed. At this moment, a fireball forms, a giant sphere of superheated gas. The temperature inside it reaches millions of degrees, several times hotter than the surface of the sun. A fraction of a second later, a thermal pulse occurs. A huge amount of energy spreads in all directions, turning everything around into a source of fire. Wood, plastic, clothing, and even skin can ignite several kilometers from the epicenter. But immediately afterward, the shock wave arrives. It travels faster than the speed of sound and literally destroys everything in its path. Glass shatters hundreds of meters, walls collapse, cars flip over, and buildings can collapse like houses of cards. The closer a person is to the epicenter, the less likely they are to survive. But even just a few kilometers away, the destruction remains catastrophic. And it's at this moment that the survival of the survivors is decided. After the explosion, a new threat emerges that can't be seen or felt: radiation. It has no odor, color, or sound, yet its effects can be deadly. Immediately after detonation, a powerful stream of penetrating radiation is released. This gamma radiation and neutron flux can penetrate building walls and damage the human body. At close range, such a dose can kill a person almost instantly. But even those who survive the first seconds of the explosion face another danger. Particles from destroyed buildings, dust, and soil rise high into the atmosphere, become saturated with radioactive elements, and slowly begin to return to Earth. Entering the body through air, water, or food, radiation begins to destroy human cells. Symptoms of radiation sickness appear: weakness, skin burns, hair loss, and severe nausea. The most insidious thing about radiation is that its effects may not appear immediately. A person may feel fine, but after a few days or weeks, their condition deteriorates sharply. And that's why the most dangerous battle begins after the explosion: the fight against an invisible enemy. After the explosion, one of the most dangerous phases begins: radioactive fallout. A huge cloud of dust, smoke, and debris rises high into the atmosphere, forming a characteristic mushroom-shaped column. Within this cloud are thousands of particles contaminated with radiation. Over time, these particles begin to return to the ground. They can fall as a fine dust, similar to gray snow.
This is why this phenomenon is often called radioactive rain. The greatest danger is that wind can carry the cloud tens or even hundreds of kilometers from the site of the explosion. This means that people far from the epicenter can still be exposed to the radiation. When radioactive dust falls on clothing, skin, buildings, and roads, it begins to emit radiation. The longer a person remains near it, the greater the dose they receive. Therefore, the main rule of survival after a nuclear strike is simple. Find shelter as quickly as possible and stay indoors. In the first hours after the explosion, the streets become one of the most dangerous places on the planet. Even if a person manages to survive the explosion and the first hours after it, the real difficulties are just beginning. The world around us changes, literally overnight. Cities are reduced to rubble, roads are littered with debris, and many buildings continue to burn. Communications disappear almost immediately. Power goes out, internet and mobile networks are down. People lose the ability to receive news and coordinate actions. Chaos and complete uncertainty ensues. Food and water become equally serious problems. Stores are destroyed or looted. Water systems can be damaged, and food supplies are cut off. This is especially dangerous in large cities, as millions of people are left without essential resources. Amid fear and panic, public order begins to unravel. Looters appear, conflicts arise over food and water, and people try to ensure the survival of their families at any cost. And at this point, it becomes clear. Surviving the explosion itself is only half the battle. The real test begins when a person is forced to live in a world where familiar civilization no longer functions. If there are multiple nuclear strikes, the consequences could extend far beyond the destroyed cities. The enormous fires that ignite after the explosions send millions of tons of smoke and soot into the atmosphere. These particles can rise very high and remain in the upper atmosphere for a long time. Over time, the dense smoke cloud begins to block out sunlight. Less heat reaches the Earth, and temperatures gradually drop. Scientists call this scenario a nuclear winter. Even a temperature drop of just a few degrees can alter the climate of the entire planet. Summers become cold and short, crops fail, and traditional agricultural regions cease to produce food. As a result, a new global problem emerges: mass famine. Even countries not directly hit could face food shortages. Thus, the consequences of a nuclear war are not limited to a single day or a single country. They can change the climate of the entire planet and affect human life for years to come. When it comes to nuclear war, many imagine the complete annihilation of humanity. But the reality is a bit more complicated. Even in a large-scale nuclear exchange, people could still survive. The only question is, how many will survive? Various studies estimate that the highest casualties will be in large cities. Megacities are prime targets because they are home to industry, military installations, and large populations. In such places, the death toll can reach into the millions. But the farther a person is from large cities and strategic installations, the higher their chances. In rural areas, the destruction may be significantly less severe, and some areas may not be directly hit at all. This means that some of the population could still survive the catastrophe. However, survival will depend not only on distance from the detonation, but also on knowledge, preparation, and the ability to quickly adapt to new conditions. These factors may determine who can continue living in a changed world.
Where you are at the time of a nuclear strike can play a decisive role. Large metropolitan areas offer the lowest chances of survival.
These cities become prime targets, and their high population density and large number of buildings amplify the destruction. Smaller towns may be slightly safer. They have fewer strategic installations, meaning the likelihood of a direct strike is lower. But even in such places, danger remains. Blast waves, fires, and radioactive fallout can spread over long distances. People in rural areas typically have the best chances of survival. Low population density, the absence of large military targets, and greater distances between buildings can significantly reduce the effects of an explosion. Protected shelters, basements, underground structures, and special bunkers offer a particular advantage. The more layers of concrete, earth, or metal that separate a person from the outside environment, the better the protection from radiation and blast waves. Therefore, in a nuclear disaster, location can be one of the most important factors for survival. But even if a person survives the explosion, radiation, and the first weeks after the disaster, another serious problem emerges, a psychological one. The world around them has changed beyond recognition. Familiar civilization disappears. There's no internet, no stores, no emergency services. For many, this comes as a real shock. Panic, fear, and a sense of utter uncertainty can push people to act rashly. History shows that in disaster situations, society changes rapidly. Conflicts over resources arise, mistrust intensifies, and sometimes a fight for survival at any cost ensues. This is why not only physical fitness, but also psychological resilience becomes an important factor. People who are able to remain calm, plan their actions, and make rational decisions have a much better chance of surviving a crisis. In a devastated world, it's not always the strongest who survive. Often, those who can quickly adapt and resist panic survive. But there's good news. Even in a nuclear disaster, taking the right actions can significantly increase your chances of survival. The first and most important rule is, if you see a bright flash, immediately lie down on the ground and try to cover your head with your hands. This can protect you from the blast wave and flying debris. The second rule is to find shelter as quickly as possible. Basements, underground parking lots, or windowless spaces are best. The more concrete, earth, or brick between you and the outside environment, the less radiation you'll receive. The third rule is to stay inside as long as possible. The most dangerous radioactive fallout occurs during the first 24 hours. If possible, don't go outside for at least 24 to 48 hours. It's also important to have basic supplies: water, non-perishable food, a first aid kit, and a flashlight. Even a small supply can help you survive the first few critical days. These simple rules aren't a complete guarantee, but they can significantly increase your chances of survival. So, can a modern person survive a nuclear war? The answer is yes, but not everyone. Your chances depend on the distance from the detonation, the correct actions taken in the first minutes, and your ability to survive in a devastated world. But if you know what to do and how to act, your chances of survival are much higher. That's why such knowledge can be invaluable. I hope you never need the advice in this video in real life. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what other survival topics we'd like to cover in future videos.